Well, it's a beautiful spring day, and I'm out in the junkyard here, also known as my backyard. And what did I find? Well, the lower grille chin panel for my 35 Chevy. And as you can see, it is in pristine condition. So, why don't you follow along for the next 40 minutes, and we're going to transform it from this twisted mess of disappointment to this untwisted mess of disappointment. Well, there's our prize. Removing the 4 bolts took longer than the actual repair is going to take, but you can see, although it's torn and bent and mangled, there's actually no rust whatsoever. So, as hopeless as this looks, all the shapes we need are all locked into here. So this is all very salvageable, believe it or not. Here's our missing puzzle piece here. You see, it's not exactly going to drop into place. It's going to take some manipulating. This side is kind of, if you squint, it could be there. This side's not gonna jam for us right now. I'm gonna drop this into my vinegar tank and let it soak for a few days, get it all derusted, and once we got clean metal, we'll come back and start straightening it out. Okay, so we got this thing out of our vinegar bath there. If you're curious, I just use plain white vinegar and just let it sit in there for a few days, and then rinse it off with water. It does flash rust pretty quick because the metal gets so clean. But that's pretty easy to clean up with a wire wheel after the fact. So what we're going to start out with here is, I want to start by getting this wrinkle out of here, because this thing is right on the verge of breaking in half, and in fact it may still break on us. It's not really a big deal, I guess, but it's just barely hanging on by a thread right now. So I want to get this flattened back out, and then I want to get this kind of tack welded back together on here, just so it's not going to break. And then from there, this whole side needs to obviously fold up, but I'm going to start with this, and I'll start by just applying some heat here. It doesn't need to be super hot, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the molecules moving around again. Right now it's under a lot of strain. Anytime anything's folded over at itself or at a dramatic angle, it's not a bad idea to heat it up a little bit, just to get things moving around. You don't really want the metal to change color. Once it changes color, then it loses its memory, it starts to change its state. And all this right now, it still has the shape of a 35 Chevy chin piece in it. It's all locked in, it's got memory. But if we start heating it up past its yield point, then all that's going to go away, and then it's not going to remember where to go. Probably not really a big deal on this, because we can still make it fit whatever we need to, but you don't want to be heating up a door skin or something until it turns blue or whatever, or red, and then that's going to make a real mess for you. So and you can see that's cracked already, and I also heated it up till it's blue, but is what it is. So I'll just keep hammering it. It's probably gonna break in half right away, but whatever. That actually probably just made our life a little bit easier. Not really any surprise that happened. There's quite a bit of fatigue here. I may have to patch in a small piece of metal because it's so badly broken up. For now, we're just gonna straighten each separate side on its own, and then we'll fit the pieces back together when we've got things kind of roughed in, and go from there. little more heat here. It's quite hot. Should probably be wearing actual gloves for this. Ah, Jesus. Metal moves a lot better when you heat it up a little bit. So I got this piece kind of roughed out and then I mocked it up here, and that's when I realized we're kind of ran into a bit of a snag here. Now this car is about a 30-year-old restoration, and you know, it wasn't done to Concours quality or anything like that. I don't want to badmouth it too much because I don't know what the car looked like before, and I mean, what they did save the car from becoming some kind of weird like 90s sheep rod type thing, or worse, rusting into the ground. Actually, rusting into the ground might be better, I don't know. Anyways, there's a lot of things on the body of this car that aren't really up to today's standards, which is fine. One of the problems here is these fenders are pretty haggard, and you know, there's a lot of kind of grandpa type repairs on them. And then the grill as well, you can see there's kind of something weird's happened here. It's all kind of bent back. And then at the bottom here, looks like there's a weld or something, and this is all kind of rolled in and pushed in. And there's a crease right here, which I'm not sure if that's supposed to be there or not, because on this side it's smooth, and when you look at the back side, it's this side appears to be undamaged, and it would make sense that it would need to be smooth, because then the actual line, the chin piece, would run along the grill here. You can see there's a dent there as well. The point of this project is not to get into all of this. I just want to fill this hole. So I think for now, I'm just going to kind of split the difference here and just make it what I think it should be. And then later on, if I ever get around to repainting this car, we'll go back and address these body issues. What I'm going to do is move on to repairing this side. Plan is we'll get this all straightened out, and then we'll get both sides bolted in and kind of fiddle around with it, and then we'll tack weld it back together, and then we can go back and weld it, and it'll be what it'll be, I guess. Alright, I got this piece kind of roughly beaten back into shape here. I've been kind of trying to find pictures of how these fit on the internet, and not really having much luck there, but what I can tell, they all fit poorly or are missing. So, not that there's any excuse for this to fit poorly, but it's going to have to, because I'm not getting into fixing these fenders. But either way, from what I've seen, they do fit slightly pronounced from the grill, and possibly there was originally some welting in between the grill and this panel, which we're not going to put in because it looks like it originally went all through the fenders there and everything. So I'm not pulling the fenders off right now, but we'll just kind of get it in the range here. Other thing from what I can tell is it looks like it's supposed to be more rounded here, which would make sense. But I think we're gonna start by getting it stitched back together, kind of. You can see we had a piece broken off, so I'm gonna put a patch in there now, unfortunately, but that's just the way it goes. I would like to TIG weld this. I was originally going to just tack weld it on here, but because I don't really want to mess up the chrome with welding sparks and stuff. I don't care about the paint, but chrome is decent, so we don't want to ruin that. I'll just do it on the bench and then kind of manipulate this to fit, and I'll get it kind of welded together, and then I'll hammer on it some more so it has some more curve in it, and we'll just keep working on it, I guess. Yeah, we're gonna try to TIG weld this. I would like that to be better than MIG welding it, but I am almost out of argon. It is Sunday evening. If I run out, it's gonna get MIG welded. Even if it was a weekday, I really don't have much interest in going out and interacting with civilization anymore. So, you know, we'll do what we can. Yeah, at this point we're just kind of trolling all the armchair metallurgists out there. I've welded up some janky stuff before, but this is pushing the limits for sure. I actually spent about half an hour trying to find the piece that broke off here so that I could weld it back in, but no luck, so I did have to put a new piece of metal in there. Probably wouldn't have been a bad idea to just remake this front peak here. It was so broken up. One thing I found with making these videos is it doesn't matter how many disclaimers you put or how many times you say this is just how I do it. You know, there's 100 different ways to do this. There's always that at least one person on every video that has to tell you that you're doing it wrong, or that their way's better. So, you know, this time I'm just handing it to you. You know, yeah, this is wrong. It's all gonna, you know, fail, and I'll crash and burn, and oh no, it's gonna crack again. Oh, whatever. I'll let all you guys lose all the sleep over this, and I'll just keep on trucking here. We'll get this ground down and smooth out the rest of this. It's all pretty rough still. Really not overly pleased with how this fits. Like I said, I think already from the pictures I've seen, these do fit slightly proud, but this is a bit excessive. I would prefer to have it back so it's more in line with this lip. I think that would be a little bit cleaner, but I ended up finding pictures of a couple of original paint, like untouched cars, and there was originally a kind of a rounded welting that fit all through here. So what I may do is just kind of cobble some kind of welting together just for this bottom, so it's not quite as obnoxious, because I did some more investigating on this grill situation. I've been kind of beating myself up trying to get this line back here, and you know, like I said, there was a repair here, and there's actually one on both sides. And what's happened here is this grill was obviously hit at some point, which would explain why the chin piece was missing, and it folded it all back. When you put a straight edge on here, you can see where it's kinked all through here. So and go over to the other side. And it's the same deal. You see the gap there? Right. And when I put my hand underneath here, I can feel it's actually like kinked in pretty harshly. So the only way to fix that is to pull the whole grill assembly off, pull this bottom section out, dig out all the Bondo and garbage that's in there, and get it all straightened out again. And we're just not getting into that, because then I'm repainting the grill, and then at that point we're repainting the whole car, because then we got to fix the fenders and everything else, and it's just not going to end. So you know, this car is just supposed to be a fun beater where I don't have to worry about parking lot dings and stuff. So because the bottom of the grill is folded back, you know, almost a quarter inch, there's nothing we can do to make this fit this without ruining this. We're just gonna have to live with it for now. Like I said, we might put some welting in here just to kind of you know, fill it out a little bit. Eventually I'd like to do kind of a quickie paint job on this, but the problem is there's not really any such thing as a quickie paint job on an old car. You know, it's still a month's worth of work, but by the time it's all painted and everything. So we'll maybe address that later, but probably not. If we get to a decent amount of subscribers and the channel starts to become self-sufficient, then we can start doing stuff like that. But right now, all we're doing is just filling this gap here. So ironically, the what was the worst part of the car, now a couple hours later, has become our datum, which we will build all the rest of this off of eventually. So the idea is we'll finish this out, and then everything else will be patterned and fit off of this, because we'll know that this is probably good, and obviously the rest of this is garbage now. So kind of interesting how the tables have turned on us. I'm gonna start the smoothing process, get these welds knocked down, and we'll start cleaning up, and then we can go to bodywork and paint and whatever else we got to do. Okay, so I got the welds kind of knocked down here, pretty rough. Well, now that our basic shape is back into this, we want to kind of go over it and kind of smooth it out and chase any imperfections. We're not going to be metal finishing this, obviously, but we do want to end up with a somewhat level surface before we start doing bodywork, so we're not chasing a bunch of high spots or low spots. I mean, you can fill low spots, but you can't fill high spots. So what I'm going to do to help us out is I've got a piece of 80 grit on a block here, and I'm just going to sand across the surface, and that'll reveal any highs and lows, and then I can go back and kind of plunk away at it and chase them out. I don't know, well, this is showing up on camera, but you can see anywhere that the sandpaper is touched, that's high, and then anywhere it hasn't is going to be low. So all through here is low. Got quite a bit of low there. Weird stuff going on there. And you can also go over this and just paint it lightly with some black paint or whatever, if you're having trouble seeing. So it's fairly consistent. There's no bit of low here, but you know, and then some weird stuff going on here. So we'll just kind of try to chase some of that out. So I've been plucking away at this now for a bit and sanding on it, and we got it looking kind of decent-ish. Still some lows, but overall the sandpaper is touching the majority of the surface, which is kind of what we're after. You can see on the inside here, one of the advantages of the TIG welding is that as you go and planish it and hammer on it, the welds basically smooth themselves out, so there's not even any real need for grinding the welds on the inside or anything. The welds are soft enough where they'll crush out on their own. Another thing I've been doing as I'm going and plucking away at this is I've got these T-dollies here. These I got from Princess Auto or Harbor Freight a few years ago, but you can make your own. All it is just a piece of steel rod welded to a chunk of steel, and these are just really handy for doing hammer and dolly work in weird places and stuff. So you can just clamp it in the bench vise there and use it as kind of a dolly essentially. That's really what it is, and you can make them in all different sizes. Pretty easy to make, but I just bought these because they were so cheap that I couldn't have built them for what they cost. So, and what I've been doing is I've just been going along and just to help level out this surface, I'm using this as my dolly and just doing an on dolly technique, which is where the dolly is backed up directly behind the hammer blow, and I'm very lightly going across it with a hammer and just planching it out. And what that's doing is just helping to smooth the surface, level out any of the high spots, and at the same time it's also acting to bring up any minor low spots. So this just, I don't even hit it very hard. At this stage it's just all about this stage is just all about finesse, so we don't need to go too hard on it. I think there might be some footage of me using this earlier on in the process where I was using it a little more aggressively to get the initial rough out done, but these are really handy, especially for doing awkwardly shaped stuff like this. They don't really make dollies that are small enough to fit in a panel like this, so that's how that works. And now that I feel like I've got the surface of this, fairly close to what it needs to be, the final step here is I'm just going to take a bastard file, and I'm going to very lightly file across the surface. The thing with the sandpaper is it can tend to float over high spots and dig into low spots because it's not very aggressive. It's essentially just sanding the metal, so sometimes it'll give you a false reading. And so kind of the final safeguard is I'm just going to very lightly go with this with the file, and that's just going to let me know if I've got any high spots or dramatic low spots that might need attention before we go to bodywork. Now you could keep plucking away at this with the hammer and bringing up the low spots and tapping down the high spots until it's totally perfect, and then filing it smooth. But we don't want to get too aggressive with the filing or sanding on this because this metal actually has quite a bit of pitting on it, so we don't want to thin the metal any more than we have to. Okay, so I went over this lightly with the file here, and it's not really bringing up any dramatic high spots or anything. It's touching the surface fairly consistently, and see my previous videos, what I've done is once I started filing, I would go back and tap up all these little lows and then continue filing until the surface is totally smooth, and so that works quite well. But in this case, you can see the metal is quite pitted, and it's got pitting on both sides of the metal, which means that we don't want to get too carried away with removing material from this. I'd rather have filler on this than thin the metal. So basically what we're looking for is just a surface where the file is touching about 90% of the metal, and it appears we've got to that stage now. So we're not going to knock ourselves out trying to get all the rest of this out, because we could just potentially run the risk of thinning this metal too much, which at that point we're essentially damaging the panel, and we're trying not to damage it, we're trying to fix it. So I would much rather have a very thin coat of filler on this than have a panel that's thin to the point where it's no longer usable. So I think at this stage I'm going to go over this with a wire wheel and just clean up all the surface rust, and then give it a sand and just get the whole surface prepped for filler, and then we'll start doing some body work. Okay, so I used the wire wheel on a drill, and I got into all these pits and got them all cleaned out, and then I went over it with the dual action sander and sanded it with 80 grit. Now we can kind of move on to doing our filler work. So you can see how nicely the vinegar gets into all these pits and gets them all cleaned out. Works quite well on small parts like this for getting the rest off. I know some people say once you get something fairly close, you can just go to primer and it'll fill any minor low spots and pitting and stuff. I prefer to just coat the whole thing with filler and then block it out, and that way you're not constantly priming and repriming. And body filler is more durable than primer. It's more, with primer it's basically paint, so if you put it on super thick it's going to be more likely to chip, whereas body filler is a little more tougher, especially the modern fillers of today. So I prefer to just skim coat the whole thing, and that way block it out, and then I know I've got it straight, then I can prime it and I don't have to constantly prime and reprime, and primer is expensive, so we don't want to waste it. And the other thing with primer is there's also higher risk of shrink back and stuff like that. So with body filler you can put it on as thick as you want. If the surface is prepped properly and it's clean, it'll, you can just cake that stuff on, but typically you want to keep it under 1/8 of an inch thick. There are times when it goes over that and it's unavoidable, but I mean, if you're consistently globbing it on, 1/4 inch or thicker, over entire panels, you probably want to kind of reevaluate that a bit. It doesn't take a whole lot longer to get things within the 1/8 inch range. This stuff, I think we're within probably 1/16 or so. That's kind of what we aim for when we've got access, and this is a pretty simple piece to fix. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to get this all wiped down with wax and grease remover, blow it off, and then we'll start slapping some filler on it. Went to the hardware store the other day and picked this up just especially for this car. Is only the best products for this thing. Yeah, I got this thing all wiped down with wax and grease remover. If you're wondering if that step is necessary, well, I mean, look what we cleaned off. That's just from a couple hours of us handling it. So we don't want all this this oil and contaminants trapped underneath our filler. So we want to start with a clean surface right from the get-go. And now I've got gloves on. I'm going to try to refrain from touching this with my bare hands again. I know it's tempting, but we must resist. And this was supposed to just be a metalworking video, but I guess seeing as how we're here, we'll kind of turn this into a filler tutorial as well. Now, the first and often overlooked step with doing Bondo work is to tin the surface. So for this, we're using our Eastwood tinning butter. Now, this stuff is just jam-packed with essential vitamins and nutrients, so we want to make sure we use it in a well-ventilated area, possibly even wear a respirator of some sort. So I chose to travel out into nature to tin the surface, because nature will absorb all the fumes. Once the surface was tinned, I scrubbed it down with water mixed with baking soda, and after that I cleaned it again with wax and grease remover. Of course, as soon as I started applying the lead, the wind decided to come up and make my life a whole lot more difficult. And the wind kept blowing the flame into my paddle and catching my paddle on fire, which was very upsetting. So at this point, I probably should have moved back inside, but I chose to persevere and struggle. So that's what we got. I chose to eliminate the sound from this so that you wouldn't have to listen to all the complaining. And after that, I went over it with the Vixen file to knock it all back down to level again. If you're new to the channel and would like to learn more about doing lead work, I do have a step-by-step video on that out already. Well, I hope you enjoyed my Bondo tutorial. We got this thing all sanded up to 180 now. So now we got a bunch of time in prepping it and fixing it. Let's hit it with some rattle can lacquer primer. Only the best for this car. You know, we gotta give the experts something to complain about here. Oh yeah. Hose the stuff on. Now a trick with 1K primer is you want to hose it on as thick as possible, and then as soon as it's dry to the touch, immediately sand and paint it, and that way within a week you'll have some really ferocious sand scratches, which will add a nice grain to your car's finish. Fortunately, I didn't plan ahead and get my paint mixed up, and then I did get paint mixed up, but the fuel pump on the Malibu decided to go from spraying fuel internally within the fuel lines to more of a external fuel pump that sprayed fuel all over my garage and the engine bay of the Malibu. So we had to fix that. Needless to say, this has had you know, several days to dry before we sanded it. You know, it's not going to be a traditional body repair now, because traditionally, like I said, you spray it on thick as possible, sand it immediately, and then paint it immediately, and then deal with the sand scratches later. And when the customer comes back to complain, you just tell them to go somewhere else. So now we won't have that problem. So we're a little disappointed here, but in keeping with cutting as many corners as possible, we went with the old rattle can there. I had my local body shop supplier mix me up some color match paint. I'm not even going to check to see if they got the color match right. I'm just going to spray it on here and hope for the best. Hopefully it matches. If it doesn't, we're still going to run it anyways, because I don't care. Should also mention that the key to a successful paint job is to paint in the filthiest environment possible, which, you know, I think we've got that going on. We got everything working to our advantage here. We got quality products, quality work environment, and a quality technician that really doesn't care how any of this turns out. But you know what? We're having fun. Well, there's the completed repair there, all installed, painted up, and you know, it fills the hole, I guess. Like I said, this is going to become our kind of reference point when we do get around to fixing the rest of this. So now that we know this is kind of all trued up, we can fix the grill, get the grill fitting better, get these sides fitting better. For now, it just kind of finishes the front end off. Even with it fitting poorly, it does look better with that on there than if it's missing. So grill's a pretty important part of a 1930s car, so we want to kind of make it all complete, and we achieved that goal. If I would have known how badly messed up this was before I started, I may not have taken on this project to even begin with, but it's done now, so something we don't have to deal with later, I guess. I did look at a bunch of pictures, and these do have welting that goes all the way through and runs up to here. There's going to be a bunch of messing around if I got to loosen off the fenders and grill and everything. That just opens up a big can of worms. So I just put in a piece here for now. It kind of conceals the poor fitment a bit and kind of finishes it off a bit. There was, from what I can tell, this was metal on metal originally, so we just left that alone. But here we go. We went from mangled garbage to something that's semi-presentable, and now it's kind of the best part in the whole front of the car. And that's not saying much because this really isn't great, but the rest of this is even worse. So what are you gonna do? Paint match actually pretty good. Somebody brush painted bottom of this grill. It looks like it's pretty crude, so obviously that's not going to match this, but the actual match here is for a butt match. That's acceptable. And yeah, we still got this dent here, so whatever. What are you going to do? I guess, like I said, eventually we'll get around to correcting all this. From there it looks perfect. That's okay too. I think I can live with that for now. Let me know if you want to see more on this car. Right now, we've got some suspension work to do. I got to do rear leaf spring bushings and got to replace some pieces on the front end. This car has a knee action suspension, so it's kind of different from what you're used to. So I don't know if you want to see some mechanical work on this or not. Let me know. Another thing we're going to do is I've talked myself into putting some blocks on the back, dropping the front down a bit. So, do the old lowrider bomb thing. Eventually, I'd like to put white walls on it. And also build some skirts for the back. So I think it'll look pretty good. Drop down a couple inches. Eventually, maybe we'll do a budget paint job on this if you guys are interested in that. It's probably not going to happen right away, but I'll make you guys a deal. This video gets 1 million views, or we get 300 patrons. I will do a budget paint job on this thing this winter. So it's in your hands now. I will eventually do a paint job on it either way, but whether it's a year from now or 20 years from now, that's going to be up to you guys. So ball's in your court. Seems like when I do videos on this car, people don't really like it. So, we may not even see it again, but I'm going to keep working on it regardless because I think it's a cool car. So let me know what you guys want to see. I don't know. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'm going to take this thing for a drive now and see how the new grill bottom holds up. And now please enjoy a short documentary on cats playing golf.